Slideshow. Current slide. Okay. This is Phil Simborg for the Backgammon Learning Center, and as you can see from the picture, we had a great chouette yesterday. The 6 players, I think many people know a lot of these players: David Rockwell, myself, Carter Madig. You might not know Rolf. He doesn't play in tournaments too much, but he's been playing for about 50 years in our chouette. David Stein's a relatively new player. Herb Roman, who is probably the best player in the world that's played, that's never won a tournament, in my opinion. He comes close, and he's a fine player. So we're all open players and all play a pretty decent game. But something really funny happened on Saturday, yesterday. We all made horrible blunders, a lot of them. Usually we'll make a few mistakes, we'll have a few bets. But yesterday, we really blew it. We had just about every position that we disagreed on, somebody blundered. And I'm not about to name who blundered on what. But because these positions were such big differences in the plays, and because I think they're also fun and interesting positions, and by the way, there were another 10 positions that I didn't bother to show because they were close and they weren't that interesting. I called in Stick, who is my teaching partner from the Backgammon Learning Center. We've been together now, it's been close to 10 years maybe, and we have 16 teachers, including Mochi and Michi. Stick is now ranked the number 4 player in the world as far as his PR on recorded live matches by the BMAB. And I figured Stick can explain what's really going on with these positions. I'll give you a little background of what happened. So let's get right into it. The first position, there's a 2-2 to play, and I'll be honest with you, I missed this one. First of all, you can pause the video if you want more time before you see the answer and hear what Stick's explanation of what the right play is. But I saw a lot of plays here, and that's the problem. When I see lots of different plays, I get sidetracked and confused, and I made the wrong play. So what would you do? Again, you can pause the video, and if not, the spoiler is I'm going to show you the answer, and we'll see how you did. You can keep track of how you did on these 15 and shoot me an email. I'd love to know how you did, and we'll see what Stick has to say about it. So, Stick, first of all, I want you to be real honest. Are there any of these 15 positions that in a chouette you might have missed yourself? Yeah? Okay, good. And I'm not embarrassed to say that we blundered, and I know a lot of you are going to want to move to Chicago to play in our chouette tomorrow, but I was watching Mochi. I watched all the top players blunder all the time. It happens. Backgammon is just not that easy, and nobody goes through the game without some blunders and mistakes. So what I did in this position was, it doesn't matter what you do, if you don't make the 4-point, you're making a real mistake, and that was the mistake that I made. The right play, of course, is to make the 4-point. I made a really bad play by not making the 4-point, and it doesn't matter which play I made. I'm not even sure which one. They're all monster blunders. It looked to me like I was trying to contain him. I was really thinking that making the bar point might be better, but the 4-point is really clear here. Stick, any comments and why it's so important? Why is 9 to 5 so bad? 9 to 5 is what a couple of other players thought they would have done. Yeah, and So this is a lot about game plan too. You're down in the race. Your best game plan is to prime that checker, and your best way to prime that checker is to leave the checker on the 9 points so you can make the bar. Once you make the bar, if you make a 6-point prime, this game is over. Uh-huh. Okay, let's go on. I'm a little embarrassed about this one because it was such a big blunder, but it wasn't the worst blunder of the day by far, so I can live with it. Okay, red to play 2-1. Again, money game. The cube has been turned. Blue's holding the cube. And by the way, this was a chouette, and for those of you who aren't familiar, we have one person playing against the rest. But when we had 6 players, it was 2 against 4. And after the cube is turned, it's consulting. So when there's consulting, you have lots and lots of discussion and arguments and lots of bets, and that's why we take so many pictures. Okay, think about how you would play a 2-1 here. And again, pause the video if you want. I'm not going to hold this up for the people that make quick decisions. I'll give you a couple seconds. Well, almost everybody agreed that you got to hit here. Put the second checker up. The question is, do you continue? Do you not continue? What do you do after you hit? Stick? Well, the play made over the board was the pick and pass, hit and lift, because he was afraid of leaving 2 shots. Uh-huh. Okay, if blue had a 4-point board or a 3-point board, well, with a 4-point board, you say, of course. What about a 3-point board? Would you pick and pass then, or would you? I got you. Okay, so what we're saying is, even if you get hit on the ace point, you are going to come in very often and still make your 4-point by leaving it there. And once you make the 4-point, you've got a hell of a game. And if you continue, you have no chance of making that 4-point. So you're always going to have this hole here, and it's going to be a real liability going forward. Okay, next position. Red to play 3-1. Give it a little thought. Pause it if you want. Okay. The right play is to hit. And over the board, the player cleared the 8-point. So what's wrong with clearing the 8-point? Why is hitting so right here? One problem that I had with the hit was that you're outboarded. Blue has a stronger board. Stick? Looks like I lost you. Yeah, I said the player over the board cleared the 8-point instead of hitting, and one of the reasons he was afraid to hit was because blue has a stronger board. Didn't want to be in a hitting situation when you're outboarded. So why is hitting right here? I can't. I can't on this. These are just pictures. Yeah, yeah. Uh huh. Mm-hmm. And one of the reasons that structure is so important here is blue is stripped on the rest of his points. So if he can't escape these checkers, what's going to happen over here is he's going to get into real trouble having to give up one of these points or possibly leave blots on this side of the board. So it isn't just about what's happening over here. Just containing these checkers puts him into big, big trouble over here. Okay, this is a cube action problem. Cube's in the center, red is on the bar, but red is on roll. Should red double here? And if red doubles, should blue take or pass? So give it some thought, pause it if you like. Okay, I hope you have your answer. If not, go ahead and pause the video and give yourself more time. It's pretty hard to double when you're on the bar, but everybody did double this, and we actually got a couple passes. So this is one of the super duper blunders, but this is one of the things a lot of people say, you shouldn't penalize the guy who doubled this if he gets a pass. but Extreme Gammon is assuming that the other player plays right, but this is not even a double. You can see why somebody might pass this cube. It looks like blue is going to be in big trouble if he doesn't roll some twos real soon and could start crashing. And I was one of the people that doubled this, and I was happy to get I was happy to get the passes. Stick. Yeah. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Okay. But it, mhm. Uh-huh. So blue is favored to roll a 2 in the next couple of rolls. He's going to roll a 2 about 30% of the time, and in 2 or 3 rolls he's going to be a big favorite to roll a 2. And what you're saying is, at the most, if red's lucky, he'll have maybe 1 or 2 checkers that might be able to cause him problems even after he rolls the 2. So there's just a lot of game left here that we just didn't realize. This is an interesting number here. What this 16.3% means is that if you can get a pass 16% of the time, you're more than making up for your 0.146 error by giving the cube. So from a reality standpoint, playing human beings, this is not a bad double, because we already proved we got passes a lot more than 16% here. So that's part of the game, and that's part of why I like Woolsey's Law so much. When you put yourself in your opponent's shoes and you ask yourself, are you taking? Well, Stick's grabbing this cube without any hesitation. A lot of other people might not grab it so fast. You might be a little scared. And that might be a reason to double, but it's pretty hard to justify this big a mistake, even when you get passes. Okay, red has a 6-1 to play here. Lots of different plays. Give yourself plenty of time. Think about what you would do. what I love about chouettes is anytime you have more than two choices, you get a lot of arguing, and we had a lot of fun with these kinds of positions. Okay, the right play is to hit and make the ace point, and of course the plays that were discussed were making the bar point, or hitting outside, or hitting two. All of those plays were considered, and the right play, I believe, was made, but there was a bet lost on this one. Stick? If this checker on the 23, if this checker on the 23 was on the 22, would you come out with the 6 and hit the 12? So the argument that was made over the board is, hey, we get a second checker back, you get a lot more gammons, and it's easier to contain two checkers, and you're passing up the chance to get that second checker when you make this play. Well, the truth is, 25% of the time after you hit and make the point, he's dancing. So you still might get that second checker, and you haven't totally given that up. Ah, that's right. That's right. Good point. Good point. Okay, let's go to the next one. This is another cube action. Red's on roll, and red is holding the cube, so it's a recube action. Should red redouble, and if red redoubles, then blue should blue take or pass. All right, we're going to move on to the answer. It is not a redouble. And again, we all redoubled this, and I think we got takes. In fact, I'm sure we took. In fact, Herb was the one who was doubled in the box, and he did take this cube. And some doubted his take, and we were shocked to find out we didn't even have a double. Stick. Uh-huh. Yeah. Uh-huh. 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 Okay, so this is a game that I don't think you can possibly understand unless you play it out or have played a lot of backgammon, and you realize how often blue will anchor with a 5, and you realize how often red has trouble getting out. And the combination of those two things is what makes this a huge take and no double. But most people looking at this might say, most people tend to look at the glass as half empty. If you're blue here, you can imagine yourself never coming in. You can imagine yourself red making the 5 point or picking and passing on the 5 point, bringing his checkers out, and you're going to get gammoned a monstrous percentage of the time. And if you only look at the glass as half empty and you look at it that way, you shouldn't play backgammon. If you're going to be a pessimist, and you can't be an optimist either. You got to be a realist. So that's why you got to play these positions out and see that blue ends up anchoring quite a bit. And if he anchors, he has a pretty decent chance to win. And at the very least, even if he doesn't win, you don't get gammon that much after you anchor. Okay. Another cube action problem. This is an initial cube, red on roll. And everybody got this one wrong, so think a little bit about what you would do here. If you're red, would you double? If you're blue, would you take or pass? Okay. The correct answer? It's a pass, a big pass, and we were smart enough to double, and I was on the doubling side. And when the guy took, I thought he was. I didn't think he was making a horrible mistake taking. We were surprised, and the answer really is in the numbers. The major reason it's a pass is these gammons are monstrous. Stick. leave it to you. Uh-huh. Well, the thinking was if he doesn't roll a two and doesn't hit this checker, or even if he hits this checker and you anchor pretty quick, yeah, 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 that's right. Yeah, but like I say, ones, twos, nines, and tens are duplicated. Okay, so we'll go on. This is just a blunder, and just it was a bad take. Yeah. But by the way, this is one of the few times that the player got punished for taking. He got gammoned, uh, and as he should have. He should have been punished. Quite often, you don't get punished for the wrong play in our chouette. It works out just the opposite. But it's nice once in a while to see that it does work. Okay, number 8 is another cube action problem. This is a redouble. Red's holding the cube, and should blue take or pass? If you were red, would you double? And if you were blue, would you take or pass? Well, I'm very proud of this one because I was blue, and I took, and I was severely chastised for it. That's why I took a picture, and it turns out that it was a big take, and I was the only taker, and everybody else passed, and I was convinced it was a take. Stick, I'll let you explain why I was so right to take this cube. Yeah, and by the way, Stick mentioned the Keith count. I teach the Keith count to every one of my students, and there's been some adjustments using the eyesight formula and some other approaches, but the Keith count has been a real savior for me because before I learned the Keith count, I would have thought that red was up by 11 pips. But if you look at the wastage, if you learn the Keith count, there's a lot more wastage on red's side of the board. These 11 pips is not really true. So what Stick did is he added wastage. There's 2 pips of wastage for every checker more than one on the ace point. So there's 4 pips of wastage here. There's a pip of wastage for this extra checker, and there's a pip of wastage for the open 5 point. Now the Keith count doesn't penalize you for having too many checkers on the 6 point, but we sure all know that's not a pretty thing to have in your bear off. On the other side of the street, blue's only got 2 pips of wastage for these 2 extra checkers on the 2 point. So this 11 pip count is not really as bad as it looked. And I realized that. I wasn't losing the race by that much. So I realized that if I didn't get hit, I've got a pretty darn good race. Plus I know that holding the cube in a race, and John O'Hagan taught me this one, another one of our teaching partners, I get an extra about 18% cube vig. About 1/6 of my winning chances are increased because I'm holding the cube in a race. So if I get lucky and don't get hit here, I'm in a really great shape in this race holding the cube. It's almost an even game. Not quite, but I'm holding the cube in almost an even game. That's a great place to be. And if I get hit, like Stick says, I'll still win some of those. So I'm very proud of this take, and I do credit the Keith count as a big part of the reason that I took. It wasn't just about the shots. Okay. This is another cube action problem and another redouble. Red is on roll. Should red redouble? And if red redoubles, should blue take or pass? Well, let's just finish that part of it right now. There's no question that blue passes this cube. The real question is red too good to redouble or not? That's really the question. Should you play on for the gammon? And we'll see. The player who was playing this made the mistake of doing the wrong thing. Would you play on for the gammon here, or would you double blue out? Is the question. Okay, the answer is it's way too good to double. And Stick, you want to explain why? Gotcha. By the way, go ahead. The roll before, okay. The roll. So the theory of whether or not you're too good or not used to be you measure your chances of losing against your chances of winning a gammon. But what Stick is pointing out is there's really something else involved. It's whether or not your opponent has a market gainer. If on the next roll he can be in a position where he would take. And if the answer is no, in most situations, compared to a bunch of gammons that you might win, then you should always be playing on. Now, in the situation where the 6 point would be open, yes, he might have a take if he hits you and the 6 point is open, and that's a market gainer. But still, for that to happen, you're still favored to win the game, and for that to happen, you still have to roll one of those bad rolls, and he has to hit it. The odds of that are not that great. Now, the roll before this, blue was on the ace point with 2 checkers, and red had a 3-4 to play and peeled the 2 checkers off of the 4 point and 3 point as opposed to clearing the 6 point. Do you have an opinion on which play was right there, Stick? Yeah, and that's exactly what happened. And the player did peel, and several people said, "Nah, if you'd have cleared the 6 point, you wouldn't be in this spot now." But if you didn't, if you did that though, you wouldn't have 2 more checkers off, and you still have a chance to leave a shot if you clear the 6 point. So clearing was the best play. Okay, let's go on. Ripping was much better, just like you said. You were right. You were right. If you have 2 checkers here and he had the ace point, ripping was much better, which is what the player did. But then he got to this position and chickened and went ahead and doubled. So he had the guts to go big, and then lost his guts. Of course, keeping the box is big in our chouette, as you can tell. we do a lot of wrong things to keep the box, and it's probably the number one thing that's cost money in our chouette is people doing things to keep the box. Okay, so here we have another cube action problem. Again, red is on roll. It's the initial cube. If you're red, do you double? If you're blue, do you take or pass? Okay. The answer is it's not a double, and we did double, and we did have a pass. So this was a great blunder to make, to be the doubler, and a horrible mistake to pass this cube. Stick, any comments? Uh-huh. Yeah, and this number right here is pretty important, that blue only gets gammoned about 22%. But keep in mind, if he wins this game, he wins 9% gammon, so his net gammon losses are pretty small. It's only 11%. And gammon fear is one of the major reasons in a chouette that people drop cubes. So the player who dropped this cube was, I'm sure, thinking that he could get gammoned a lot in this game, a lot more than it looks like. A lot of game left. A lot of game left here. Okay, red to play 6-5. I'll save you some time. There's obviously two choices. There's breaking the 13 point, bringing two checkers down for builders, or there's pointing on the 2 point. And of course, the reason I'm showing you this is that the player made the wrong play. Which play would you make? Yes. Wow. You know what? Nobody even mentioned that. That might be better than the play that was made. That might be the second best play. Could be. So which play do you make? All right, let me show you the answer. The answer is bring the two down. Now the reason that the player pointed, and he explained it, and he got away with it, by the way, was he not only did he think he could win more gammons and blitz more and gain more time, but he also was afraid of giving blue his full roll by not hitting, because if blue rolls a 2 and he anchors, he's afraid of that, or he's afraid of getting hit off the ace point, and this whole idea of taking away half his roll was one of the major motivations. So what's wrong with the pointing play, Stick? Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Does the fact that red's holding the cube here have any bearing on this play? If the cube were on the other side, would it matter? Uh-huh. I was thinking the cube might have an effect, because if you make the correct play here and blue doesn't roll a 2 and doesn't do something good, you might be getting closer to a redouble, but I guess you still have some work to do because of that checker back on the ace point. I guess if red's checker was on the 2 point, it would be a far bigger game for red. Okay, let's move on. Number 12. This again is a recube problem. Red is on the bar and thinking about redoubling. If he does redouble, does blue take or pass, and should red redouble or not? What do you think? Okay, the answer is it is a redouble, and it is a big take. And Stick, I'll let you take it from here. Well, on that subject, On that subject, I was very upset with XG giving me a horrible blunder on a containment play in Chicago where it said I made a .294 error. And when I rolled it out using gigantic 5-ply, it turned out that the other play was a .2 something error. So, so by the way, it took me 8 hours to do a gigantic 5-ply rollout. Uh, uh, it was a 5-ply. Now I'm doing right now. I'm sorry. It was a 4-ply. It was a 4-ply gigantic rollout. Now I'm doing gigantic 5-ply XGR plus plus, and it's going to take me 8 days. And I'm doing it. I'm doing it on my spare computer so that it doesn't tie up my RAM on my computer. So what Stick is saying is we do know there are certain types of positions that XG isn't entirely good with, and knowing which kinds of positions those are is key to helping your game. And I had no idea this is one of the ones that XG doesn't get right or doesn't get that accurate. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but in containment and back games, it might even give you the wrong play by a mile. So you really have to. We still don't have a bot that's perfect yet. We're getting there. This is as good as it comes as we've gotten before, but we still got work to do. Now the blunder that was made here was the pass. This was passed. And the player, why should you take this cube? Well, the very first thing I see if I'm blue is that I'm not going to get gammoned very much. If red is successful, unless he gets another checker and closes me out, that's like about 3% gammons. So I learned a long time ago that if I'm not going to get gammoned too much in a money game, it usually doesn't cost me that much to take cubes that I think might be a take. So that's pretty much my benchmark. I didn't know. There's no way in the world I would have known that I'd win this game 24% of the time. I just don't know how to come up with that number, and I don't think very many people could unless they already had looked at a lot of positions and did it from a standpoint of having it as a reference. I mean, how good would you have been at estimating wins here, Stick? Could you have come close to 24%? Yeah. You'd know it was a take just from reference. Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah. So there are positions where I would bet anything that Stick could come within 1%. There are positions where I bet I could come within 2%. This isn't one of them. So I had no idea how much blue would win this game, but I just felt like since I don't know, it might be a take, it might be a pass, but if I pass, at least if I take, I'm just not going to get gammoned that much. So I use Woolsey's Law as red here. Since I think blue might pass, that's the major reason I'm doubling here, because I might get a pass. I didn't know if it was a take or not myself. But the blunder was the pass. Why is this a take? Would you see enough light at the end of this tunnel to take this cube, Stick? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Uh-huh. This is something. This is one of the biggest advantages I think I've had in becoming a teacher and having to work with people like Stick and John O'Hagan and Perry and Mochi and Michi are on our team now. Dmitry Obukov just joined as our Russian teacher. Working with these people, I've learned strategies for understanding positions better, and across the board, every one of them will point out variations. They won't just look at this position and say why this is a take or pass, but they'll test it. If we had the time, I would put this position in XG and move a checker to the 4-point and see how big a take it would be then, and maybe it wouldn't be a double. So looking at the variations is the way you really get to understand and remember these things. Okay, let's go to the next one. Number 13. Notice that red does have a checker off. It's a bear off question. The cube has already been turned. You have a 5-2, and of course the question is whether you clear the 6-point or clear the 5-point. Clearing the 5-point gets an extra checker off, which will win you more gammons, but it's a little bit riskier in terms of leaving shots. Is it worth it? And this is a hard one for me. When you obviously are going to win a gammon, you don't take the chances. When there's no chance to win a gammon, you don't take the chance. It's these in-betweeners where the gammons are not sure is where it's hard to know when to take the chance or not. So first of all decide whether or not you would take off an extra checker, and in which case you would leave a shot with a 6-1 or a 5-1, or you would play safe and nothing leaves a shot, but you don't get another checker off. So give it some thought, and then I'm going to ask Stick to tell me how he makes these decisions. Okay, the answer is you play safe here. Stick, how do you know when you're supposed to gamble? Ah, very good point. Very good point. Now, there's another thing, and I think I heard this from Stick first, but I've heard it from from a few people since, and that is something that's very important. And this goes along with what Stick is saying about making the DMP play. You cannot win a gammon any game that you lose. And you can't lose a gammon any game that you win. So when you make the DMP play, by virtue of the fact that you're more likely to win the game, you're also more likely to win the gammon. So by playing safe, you might win as many or more gammons anyway, just because you prevented the loss. So that's one of the major things to think about on these DMP plays. Now, if you made the gammons a little bit closer, if you made Blue's board worse, if he had the open 5-point, for example, and maybe 2 blots in his board, and maybe it wasn't so clear that you'd win gammon so easily, then you'd have a very strong reason to gamble and take off the 5-point here. At what point do you swing it? There's too many variables to give you a flat answer. You have to really. That's why I think these are hard. This one wasn't hard. This one should have been a no-brainer, and this one was blundered by one of our very, very good players. And I won't say who, because all of our players are pretty good. But it was a blunder, and we're learning our lesson. Okay, let's go. We got 2 more. This is a cube action problem. Red is on roll. This is a pure racing situation. It shouldn't be that hard, with some kind of formulas or some science to figure out what the cube action is here. Should red double? And if red doubles, should blue take or pass? So before I show you the answer, Stick, do you use Ward, Kleinman, Trice, Stack and Straggler, Keith count, EPC? What the hell do you use here to decide about the cube action? What's your... Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Uh-huh. So would you have come up with the right cube action here? Well, you're honest. That's nice to hear. So this is a pass, and it's pretty hard for people to imagine that when you're only losing by 2 pips, you should pass. And again, if you use the Keith count, you'll see that blue has tremendous wastage. He has all these extra checkers on the 2-point, And this is not a pretty position, and he has 2 extra crossovers. Now the Keith count doesn't deal with crossovers, and that's why John O'Hagan and I have decided when we teach the Keith count, we also add crossovers to that Keith count. We haven't switched to the eyesight method, but we have pretty much stayed with Keith count, but we do add something for crossovers. It is, Isaac gets it wrong too? Okay, they all get it wrong. Okay, so does EPC get it right? No. Okay, so nothing gets this right, and so I can't blame the player over the board who took this cube for getting it wrong and thinking he had to take. And it wasn't a horrible mistake. It was only a 0.054 error to take the cube. By the way, I was criticized not too long ago by saying this is a 5.4% error. This is not a 5.4% error. That's not what 0.054 means. What does it mean, Stick? Okay. But well, if you're playing for $1 a point here, aren't you giving up 5.4 cents? So it is a 5.4% error. What's wrong with my saying it that way? Ah, I see. Okay. Okay. So for money play, I see. Okay. I got you. Okay. All right, let's go on. Last one. This is another cube action problem. Cube is in the center. Red is on roll. Should red double? And if red double, should blue take or pass? Let's see if everybody can get this last one right. Because we sure didn't get it right over the board. Okay, the answer is it's a double and a take. And several people thought this was a pass, and several people thought this wasn't a double. We were wrong on both sides. Stick, what's your analysis of this one? Mm-hmm. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Okay, just for clarification, John O'Hagan came up with a theory of market losers. It was one of the first things I learned from John, and I teach it to everybody. What you do is you start out with Woolsey's law. We still believe firmly in asking yourself if your opponent has a take. And in this position, if you weren't sure if your opponent has a take, you don't have to go any further. It's a double anytime you're not sure if he has a take or if you think he has a pass. But if you think he has a take, which is the correct thought here, because he does have a clear take, then if you John O'Hagan's law says that if you think you will lose your market about 25% of the time net, which is 9 out of 36 rolls, which is what Stick did. He came up with 9 out of 36. That means on the next roll, after 25% of your rolls followed by his rolls, he's probably dropping, then you should give the cube. That's assuming that the other rolls, the other 27 rolls, are not terrible rolls that hurt you real bad. And red doesn't have any rolls here that are monster anti-market losers, that are terrible rolls that would crack his prime or cause him to lose or anything like that. Now, Stick made another comment that I think was very, very interesting. He said that because red is stuck back here, blue's got plenty of game here, plenty of counterplay. I put this position in and I came to the same conclusion, and I asked myself, what if red's checker were on the 18 point? Do you know the answer there, Stick? If red's checker was on the 18 point, what the cube action would be? You would pass it? So just moving from here to here, Stick would pass, and he's right by a mile. I just put Stick on the spot. It went from a .26 take to a .33 pass. It took a .5 swing, which is monstrous. So Stick nailed it. The reason why blue has a take is this checker right here. And if this checker can easily get out, blue hasn't got enough game to take this cube, and it's going to be a big, big pass. So again, I wasn't sure that was the reason, and I played around with some other things. I gave red more builders to make the 5 point. I kept the checker back there, and I did because I really wanted to understand this position better by playing variations. And I found out that if you take these two checkers and you put one on the 7 point and one on the 6 point, that also becomes a monster pass because now you have so many more numbers that make the 5 point, or if he comes in on the 1 and the 2 point or whatever, it just gives you a much better game if these two checkers are not stacked. So it doesn't take too much to move a checker here or there to turn it into a take or a pass. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you think Stick's teaching style or my teaching style is good, well, let me tell you, we have very different styles, but we both teach exactly the same kinds of things. Often to different levels of students. As soon as I get a student that goes through the basics and is a strong intermediate player, I turn them over to Stick or John or Dennis Culpepper or Perry or David Presser or one of the higher level teachers. But we have 16 teachers, and now we have eight or nine different languages. I've lost count because we just added Russian and Hebrew this year. So go to the www.thebackgammonlearningcenter.com if you're interested in lessons, and we will be making an announcement shortly about a very special new thing we're doing with boot camps. So I will not blow it by telling you the details, but we're going to have a whole new project from the Backgammon Learning Center. Stick, thanks for your help. Thanks for watching. I encourage you all to play chouettes. It's a great way to learn. It's fun, and if you like to gamble, it's great gambling too. Talk to you all soon. Bye-bye. Thanks, Stick. Very, very good. I'll post this and we'll advertise it, and we'll go from there. Bye-bye.